So are we going to do these?
Teresa, this is Mark. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Is everybody there?
We are.
You're all ready to go?
We're ready.
Okay.
Let me see if I can
Started.
There it goes.
Good morning. My name is John Rogers. I'm the Associate Director of the Division Oil, Gas, and Mining. And pursuant to Utah Administrative Code R641-113-100, I've been asked to be a hearing examiner for this matter by the Board of Oil, Gas, and Mining. That matter is a request for agency action, docket number 2016-001, cause number 187-11. It's a request for QEP Energy Company for order suspending the application of Utah Administrative Code R649-3-2, R649-3-10, and R649-3-11, 1 and 2 for the South Red Wash Unit covering the south half and north half of the south half of Section 1, all of Sections 12 and 13, and the north half and southeast quarter of Section 24, Township and 8 South, Range 22 East, Salt Lake Base Meridian, and all of Sections 3, 4, 6 through 10, 13 through 24, the east half and northeast quarter, and the south half of the Section 5, the south half of Section 11, and the south half of Section 12, Township 8 South, Range 23 East, Salt Lake Base Meridian, Uintah County, Utah. I will note that this matter is being streamed from the Department of Natural Resources on the YouTube channel, and that's the technology we are amazed to have right now. It saves a lot of travel time, and we appreciate those involved getting that put together. I'm being represented by John Robinson of the Attorney General's office on my right, and then we have Steve Alder representing Division Oil, Gas, and Mining. And Steve, would you like to introduce who's with you today?
They can introduce themselves.
Dustin Doucette, Petroleum Engineer for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Brad Hill, Oil and Gas Permitting Manager for the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Okay. And present in the room today, we have a few members of the public and interested parties, and I'd like to just have them introduce themselves if they could. Would you feel okay with that?
Great idea.
Okay.
Bill Ward with Holland and Hart.
Michael Coulthard, Bureau of Land Management.
Melissa Reynolds with the Utah Attorney General's Office.
John Baza, Director of the Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Dane Doucette with the Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Josh Payne with Utah Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining.
Okay. Mr. Burghardt, would you like to introduce who you have present in Denver, Colorado?
Yes, my name is Mark Burkhardt. I am with Holland and Hart, and I represent QEP Energy Company. Participating via video conference from Denver is Teresa Chapman, Aaron Bazell, and Daniel Rabiolo.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we will proceed to you, Mr. Burghardt, to present your case.
Thank you. As an initial procedural matter, I would ask that these witnesses be sworn in. If Teresa and Aaron and Daniel, if you could crowd together there, we'll have you sworn in.
Will you raise your right hands, please? You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. As a procedural matter, thank you. As a procedural matter, I will move for admission of the exhibits at the end of our presentation, if that is acceptable.
That'll be fine.
As an initial matter, I would like to thank the division and the board and the Department of Natural Resources for hosting this video conference and allowing us to conduct this hearing via video conference to save travel time. It is new technology, and we're excited to employ this in these sort of administrative hearings before the board. So, QEP is seeking an order to suspend application of the default siting and location rules in Utah Administrative Code R641-3-2, R641-3-10, and R641-3-11, subsections 1 and 2, for those lands located in the South Red Wash Unit in Uintah County, state of Utah. The oil and gas underlying the South Red Wash Unit and subject to this request for agency action are owned by the United States and the state of Utah. These lands are covered by multiple federal leases and a single state lease, with QEP owning 100% of the working interest in these leases. The South Red Wash Unit was approved on June 9th, 2013. The unit is administered by the BLM, with QEP serving as the unit operator. Section 16 of the unit agreement states that all operations must be conducted in a manner that will promote conservation and prevent waste. Well location and density patterns are determined by the unit agreement and the annual plan of development and operation, which are approved by the BLM. Applications for permit to drill must be approved by both the BLM and the state of Utah. The division. The lands covered by this request have not been spaced. They are subject to the default siting and location rules, which provide for 40-acre density pattern. Based on this pattern, approximately 343 additional wells can be located within the unit. However, because of the difficult terrain and existing surface uses, at least 32 of these wells will require exception locations. QEP is, therefore, requesting suspension of the default siting and location rules within the South Red Wash Unit. The board has jurisdiction in this matter pursuant to Utah Code Annotated Sections 40-6-5 and 40-6-6.5. At the request of QEP Energy Company, the board has appointed a hearing examiner for purposes of taking evidence and recommending findings of fact and conclusions of law to the board. Notice of the request was mailed to all affected interest owners at their last address of record and was sent to all appropriate government agencies. No objections have been filed. QEP will establish through the testimony and other evidence presented today that the suspension of the default siting and location rules for the lands located within the South Red Wash Unit is appropriate and that it will conserve the oil and gas resource and prevent waste. With that introduction, I would like to call my first witness, Teresa Chapman. For the record, could you please state your name and business address?
My name is Teresa Chapman. Business address is 1050 17th Street, Suite 800, Denver, Colorado, 80265.
And what is your occupation?
Landman.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Landman for Uintah Basin Division.
Thank you. And are you familiar with the land subject to this request for agency action?
Yes, I am. I've been responsible for this area for the last 2.5 years.
Thank you. If I could turn your attention to the certificate of service that was filed. It's tab 2 in the binder, I think, that you have in front of you. Do you recognize the names appearing on this list?
Yes, this information came from BLM records, state records, and county records.
And does this list consist of the affected interest owners in the South Red Wash Unit?
Yes.
Turning to exhibits B and C, which I don't have a display of because of the length. Are you familiar with those exhibits?
Yes, I am. This is the unit agreement. Exhibit B is the unit agreement to the South Red Wash Unit area. It was initially formed by Kerr McGee, and QEP acquired Kerr McGee's interest in effective May 1st of 2015. And the BLM approved the successor operator designation effective October 28, 2015.
And turning now to Exhibit C, could you please explain what this exhibit is?
Yes, this is Exhibit B to the South Red Wash Unit Agreement, and it shows the lands within the unit, acreage, ownership information for basic royalty, lessee of record, overriding royalty, and working interest owners.
And where did you obtain Exhibits B and C?
This was obtained from BLM records.
Thank you. If I could turn your attention now to Exhibits L1 through L3. Are you familiar with these exhibits?
Yes, I am. I prepared this exhibit.
Did you prepare all three exhibits, L1 through L3?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Turning specifically to Exhibit L1, could you please explain what this map represents?
This map represents the state of Utah and the counties within. It also shows the location of the South Red Wash unit in yellow, encircled by a red circle. It's it's about 35 miles southeast of Vernal, Utah, in Uintah County, Utah.
Thank you. Turning now to Exhibit L2, could you please explain what this map depicts?
This map shows federal and state lands within the South Red Wash unit. Federal is indicated by yellow and state is indicated by blue. There's only one state parcel in the unit.
If you could repeat that, there's only one state parcel.
Within the South Red Wash unit, there are 16 federal tracts.
Thank you. And what is QEP's working interest in these lands?
QP has a 100% working interest in the unit.
Thank you. Let's turn now to Exhibit L3. Could you please explain what this is an image of?
This image is an aerial image of the South Red Wash unit, indicated by the red boundary. The green boxes are the default state siting rule general location areas. And as you indicated, there are 343 potential well locations with 32 that have accessibility issues.
Okay, I have no further questions for Ms. Chapman.
Mr. Alder, do you have any questions?
Yes, Mr. Doucette has a question, if you could allow him to ask that.
Yeah, Dustin Doucette for the division. As far as the South Red Wash unit, does that encompass all formations?
Yes, it does.
Okay, and how many wells have been drilled to date in the South Red Wash unit? Are you?
I believe there were 3.
11, 18.
Oh, okay, so 11 total, 8 were P&A'd.
Okay, thank you.
We have no other questions. Okay. Mr. Burkhart?
Thank you. I would now like to call Aaron Bazell. Could you please state your name and business address for the record?
Aaron Bazell, 1050 17th Street, Suite 800, Denver, Colorado, 80265.
And what is your occupation?
Associate geologist.
And are you familiar with the lands subject to this request?
Yes, I am.
How are you familiar with these lands?
I've been working this play for QEP for almost 2 years.
If you could speak a little louder, having a little difficulty hearing you on this end. Could you repeat that last answer?
Yes, I've been working this play for QEP for almost 2 years.
Thank you. A copy of Mr. Bazell's resume is attached as part of Exhibit A, and Mr. Bazell has previously been recognized as an expert in geology in cause number 191-07. Based on his education and experience and his previous certification as an expert, I ask that Aaron Bazell be recognized as an expert in geology for purposes of his testimony today.
Yes, the division does not object to his giving expert testimony in this hearing. Accepted.
Thank you. Let's turn your attention to exhibits G1 through G7. Are you familiar with these exhibits?
Yes.
And were they prepared by you or under your supervision?
Yes.
Let's turn specifically to exhibit G1. What does this image depict?
Exhibit G1 is a structure map based on the top of the Wasatch in Sub-C, with the South Red Wash unit in the center of the map outlined in red. Also on this map are 3 areas adjacent to the South Red Wash unit that are subject to increased density orders of less than 40 acres. They include in blue to the north, the Red Wash, in green to the west, Wansis Valley, and in the pink shaded color to the west, north, and southwest, the White River unit. And all three of those areas are also operated by QEP Resources.
So each one of those shaded areas, those are units?
Yes.
Okay, so the red wash unit, if you could go through this again, the red wash unit and what other units?
Yes, the Red Wash unit is to the north of South Red Wash unit, and it is shaded in blue. To the west in green is Wansett Valley. And to the west, north, and southwest is White River.
And where are the land subject to this request located?
In the South Red Wash unit, outlined in red.
Thank you. And why is this map relevant to the request today?
This map establishes that increased density orders have been performed on lands adjacent to South Red Wash.
Let's turn your attention now to Exhibit G2. What do these images depict?
Exhibit G2 is a type log taken from the White River 6D5-8-23. It's located within the White River unit in the northern part of South Red Wash. And it represents the stratigraphic equivalent of the interval between the top of the Wasatch Formation, it's found at 6168, to the base of the Castlegate Formation, is found at 11,500 feet.
And why is this interval relevant?
This is the interval that is currently targeted by QEP.
For Kelly Ricketts, this is not a sales or marketing call. If this is Kelly Ricketts, press.
Let's go ahead and continue there.
Once again, if this is.
We appear to have a little bit of background noise, and let's go ahead and proceed. If you could repeat your last answer. So why is this relevant to the request, this interval?
This well is showing the stratigraphic interval of the Wasatch and Mesa Verde formations of interest to QEP.
Mark, we're having some issues on this end. Going to resolve this as quickly as possible.
I think it's done.
And that's it. Sorry, you're back on.
Thank you. Let's proceed and see if we get any more disruptions. So let's turn now to Exhibit G3. Could you please explain these images?
Yes, the image in the upper left is a paleogeographic map of the North American Craton during the late Cretaceous. It shows the western interior seaway cutting through the continent with the Uintah Basin on its western margin. The image in the bottom right is a regional depiction of the depositional environment during the late Cretaceous. It includes the seaway and the deposition of the Mancos Shale. As we transition to the near shore, we move into the Mesa Verde, which is composed of shoreline sands and marshy areas in the nearshore environment, then transitioning into tidally influenced rivers in the coastal plain that lead to the deposition of channel sands, splay sandstones, and point bars, and finally transitioning into the alluvial plain, which leads to the deposition of channel sandstone splays as well as floodplain shells.
And so is this the depositional environment that you encounter in the South Red Wash unit?
Yes, we do.
Let's turn our attention now to Exhibit G4. Could you please explain this diagram or this image?
Exhibit G4 is a schematic taken from measured sections in an outcrop in Sago Canyon in Thompson, Utah, which is approximately 100 miles south of South Red Wash. This was work performed by Rex Cole in 2008. What the diagram depicts is the base of it is the top of the Sago sandstone of the Mesa Verde, and it shows three different types of sand bodies that were observed in this outcrop. They include the biggest sands, the red multi-story sand bodies, which are an amalgamation of channel sandstones. The blue are single-story channel sands, and the smallest of these sands observed in the outcrop are highlighted in orange and represent splay sandstones. Superimposed on this are three blue lines that represent approximate 40-acre well density. What this shows is that a couple of the larger sands are intersected by two well bores, but the majority of them are only intersected by one well bore. And as we progress down to the smaller sands, the single-story channel sands as well as the splay deposits, they are intersected by only one or none when set up at a 40-acre density.
Let's turn now to Exhibit G5. Could you please explain this exhibit?
Exhibit G5 shows the location of two different cross sections. A to A prime is to the southwest of the South Red Wash unit and is located within the White River unit. And it shows 3 wells that are on approximately 40-acre density. Cross section B to B prime is located to the north of South Red Wash unit in the Red Wash unit itself and represents 3 wells that are on approximate 20-acre density. Both of these will be looked at on subsequent exhibits in greater detail towards the base of it, and will continue the theme of highlighting the discontinuity of sandstones within the Mesa Verde Formation.
Why were these 6 specific wells chosen?
These wells were chosen for their proximity to South Red Wash, as well as being at 2 different densities of wells to be able to show that discontinuity of sandstones.
And do you expect similar results in the South Red Wash unit?
Yes.
Let's turn now to Exhibit G6. Could you please explain this image?
Exhibit G6 is cross-section A to A prime and was composed of 3 wells within the White River unit immediately to the southwest of South Red Wash. The gamma ray track on these 3 wells are shaded in yellow to represent sands and gray to represent shales. And these are spaced at approximately 40-acre density. And what this shows is that a couple of sands can be traced from well to well, but for the majority, these sands are only intersected by 1 wellbore. Again, continuing that theme that was observed in Outcrop, that 40-acre density doesn't intersect every potential reservoir sandstone.
Let's turn now to Exhibit G7. Could you please explain this image?
Exhibit G7 is cross-section B to B prime. This was taken from 3 wells within Red Wash, just to the north of South Red Wash. And these 3 wells are spaced at approximately 20-acre density. Again, the gamma ray curve is shaded in yellow to represent the sands. On this one, more sands can be seen to connect between the 2. However, there are still some sands that are only observed in 1 wellbore. Again, this is showing that discontinuity of sandstones and potential sandstone reservoirs within the Mesa Verde Formation.
So, in your opinion, would the development of the land subject to the request for agency action within the South Red Wash unit on a 40-acre well density pattern conserve the resource and prevent waste?
Yes.
And in your opinion, will the suspending of the default siting and location rules and proceeding with development in accordance with the unit agreement conserve the oil and gas resource and prevent waste?
Yes.
I have no further questions for Mr. Bazell.
Mr. Bissell, I have a few questions if I could then, if nobody from the staff does. With regard to Exhibit G1, if you could return to that exhibit. Do you know the density of the surrounding units that you identified, the Red Wash and the other 2?
They have vacated siting.
So it's just vacated siting and then well location and density based on the federal determinations or federally approved determinations?
Yes, there are some 20-acre spacing within Red Wash, but also 10-acre spacing has been tested as well.
Okay, and the other 2 units, what are the densities of those?
40-acre for the most part. However, there is some 20-acre, I believe, within White River.
Okay, thank you. And then if you could turn to Exhibit G3. It says that the scale there shows 0 to 100 miles in the lower right-hand corner of that. So it's a pretty big area. Could you describe or tell, in your opinion, what section of that sort of visual depiction of the mountains to the sea, this area that is being part of this request, where that would be typical of?
Yes, the cross sections that were displayed in exhibit, the detailed portion in exhibit G7
Yes.
will highlight right above the yellow on the edge of the seaway, right above the Sago sandstone. So it represents that portion transitioning from there into the coastal plains where we looked at in detail.
Can you go back, Mark, to the, so right there, just right next to, between the ocean and the green, that yellow area, is that it?
Yes, between the yellow and the green.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful.
Mr. Berger, I have a few questions. Could we refer back to Exhibit G4? Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm assuming that your targets are mainly the multi-story sand bodies because they tend to be vertically and horizontally more continuous?
We do target those. However, we also target single channel stands and the splay deposits where we find them as well.
Okay. Being that the multi-story sand bodies tend to be wider spread, is there an issue with the communication there at all, or is that sourced out through permeability and porosity? They wouldn't communicate at that level?
There is the slight possibility that some do, but there are also possible internal barriers within it to flow. So just because, for example, that topmost one that extends the furthest is intersected by two, doesn't necessarily mean they communicate between both wellbores as far as drainage.
So you would describe this as a collation of sand bars, sand channels, different bars rather than one continuous sand body?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. No more questions.
Thank you. With that, I'd like to now call my final witness, Daniel Rabiolo. If you could please state your name and business address for the record.
My name is Daniel Rabiolo. I work at 1050 17th Street, Suite 800, Denver, Colorado, 80265 at QEP Energy.
And what is your occupation?
I'm a senior reservoir engineer in the Uintah division.
And are you familiar with the subject or the land subject to this request for agency action?
I am. I've worked in this basin for 3 years, and I've been the primary reservoir engineer in charge of this play for the last year.
So Mr. Rabiolo's resume is attached as part of Exhibit A. He was recognized by the board as an expert in petroleum engineering in cause number 191-06 and 191-07. Given his education and experience and prior certification as an expert, I request that he be recognized as an expert in petroleum engineering for today's hearing.
We have no objection.
So accepted.
Thank you. Turning your attention to Exhibit E1, are you familiar with Exhibit E1?
I am.
And was it prepared by you or under your supervision?
It was prepared by me.
Could you please walk us through what this image depicts?
So Exhibit E1 references a group of 8 wells that were drilled 2 miles north of South Redwash Unit in the Redwash Unit. In section 28, there's 6 wells on a 2x3 pattern. The point of this slide is to show that one of these wells isn't capable of draining 40 acres. And so the 6 wells listed on this slide have a total EUR of just under 18 BCF of gas. That's just under 3 BCF per well, specific to that 6 well pattern. In section 28, we've calculated there's 149 BCF of gas in place, which is 9.3 BCF per 40 acre square using the geologic cutoffs listed. And so doing the simple calculation of EUR divided by gas in place, we come up with the fact that a single well would only recover 32% of a 40 acre square, which is not a full recovery that we would want in a development. And so we believe that these results represent our newest techniques, newest pay calculations, and we believe that this set of wells is similar to what we would expect within the South Redwash Unit on a similar pattern. And the point of this slide basically is to show that the vacation of siting would allow us the flexibility to place wells optimally to get full recovery of the resource, which can't be achieved at the 40-acre siting. And we believe that these wells are representative of what development in South Red Wash would be.
So in your opinion, would the development as you've outlined here conserve the resource and prevent waste?
Yes.
And in your opinion, will the suspending of the default siting and location rules and proceeding with development in accordance with the unit agreement conserve the oil and gas resource and prevent waste?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions for Mr. Rabiolo.
Mr. Alter?
Mr. Doucette has a question, please.
So earlier, I think the testimony was that there were 11 wells drilled in the subject area, and 8 of those wells were P&A'd. Could you describe maybe the history of those wells and why a high percentage were P&A'd? Did they produce, et cetera?
Those wells were P&A'd prior to QEP's acquisition of the lands. I don't know anything about those 8 wells that are P&A'd except for that they are P&A'd. The 3 remaining wells are currently producing. They're producing at rates from about 30 MCF a day to up to about 60 MCF a day. Those wells had limited, a much more conservative interpretation of pay and were targeted in a much smaller percentage of sands than what QEP would do. And so the performance of those wells their EUR is anywhere from just under half a BCF to less than a quarter of a BCF of gas. So I don't know a lot about each individual well. I know that they're not completed or targeted the way that QEP plans to develop the unit, and that they're underperforming based on our interpretation of the lands. But I don't have a lot of history as to how they were completed or any of the specific details, since they weren't drilled and completed by QEP.
Okay. What formation are the 3 wells producing out of?
Mesa Verde.
Mesa Verde.
Mesa Verde. So is that that would be your main objective in what you're completing going forward as well?
Yes.
But they weren't completed as QEP would. A lot of sands left bypassed or et cetera in those.
Exactly. Bypass sands. I think not all the wells were drilled to the same depth that we would try and get to, and they have a narrower view of what pay is compared to what we're considering pay. For the vintage of the wells. They're not brand new wells anymore.
So you feel pretty comfortable the wells you're drilling will be, I guess, paying quantities, and then what happens if they end up not being in paying quantities?
Yeah, so we do expect that we'll be able to create wells that are paying wells, and we expect that the volumes recovered will be significantly greater than the 3 active wells in the play right now. I suppose if we don't get a paying well, we'll drill another one and try and get a paying well again. Oil and gas in place should be sufficient to make a paying well right now.
Okay, thanks.
If I could just follow up on that, how many wells then would you drill from what would the density be approximately? Are you looking at 10 or 20 or what? Do you have any idea?
So our recent success in the Red Wash unit immediately to the north suggests that a 20-acre density pattern is economic and recovers a high percentage of gas in place without significant interference or depletion issues. We would expect that a 20-acre density would also work in South Red Wash. However, it's possible that it could be 25 or 18 or 30. But in every case we've looked at, we believe that 40-acre density is not tight enough and that we're leaving resource behind by staying at that density.
Okay, thank you. And maybe you're not the right witness for this, but what is the process for getting approval for densities with this federal unit? Is that up to your discretion as long as you comply with the terms of the unit agreement?
Yes, that's correct, as long as we comply with the terms.
And as Mr. Doucette suggested, if their wells are determined not to be paying, is that a determination that's made by the BLM?
It is. We
And
would
if-
have to submit an application.
Okay. I assume you're going to ask the BLM to comment on this matter. I think they've provided a letter, but Mr. Burkhart.
Yes, I was going to raise
Okay.
it and then.
Then I have no
Mr.
other
Coulthard,
questions.
so.
Just a question or two. The unit in blue north of the South Red Wash unit, I assume that you're making the point that the geology and the engineering is up there is very similar to what you're applying in the South Red Wash unit?
Yes, exactly.
And have you been successful in that northern unit?
Yes, we have.
Okay. Also, I'd like to refer to the request for agency action on, it says, well location and density patterns within the South Red Wash unit are determined by unit agreement and the annual plan of development and operation, which are approved by the BLM. Currently, how is spacing allocated by the BLM without this vacated matter you're asking for today?
I believe it's based on the current siting rule.
So zip this based on siting, okay? No more questions?
With that, that ends our presentation today, and as I'd mentioned, I would like to move for admission of exhibits B and C, L1 through L3, and then G1 through G7 and E1 be admitted at this time.
Mr. Burkhart, would you amend that to include Exhibits A?
I will. Exhibits A, which we did not cover, are the resumes, but yes, move for
Appreciate
admission
that.
of Exhibit A as well.
And I missed exhibit D. Did you say that or just?
I had
The BLM letter?
Apologize. Yes, and Exhibit D as well, but I do not believe that we covered that, so if you'll give me a moment.
Oh, okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out. So, if I could recall Teresa for just a moment to cover Exhibit D. You'd mentioned it, but not specifically as Exhibit D. So, Teresa, if you could turn your attention to Exhibit D in the materials.
Yes, Exhibit D is the final approval letter from the BLM for the South Red Wash unit.
And where did you obtain a copy of this letter?
From BLM records.
Thank you. With that background, I would move for admission of Exhibit D as well.
Okay, accepted. Okay. Mr.
No
Alder?
objection to the offered exhibits.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Alder, do you have any cross-examination?
No, the division doesn't have further cross-examination. We have no witnesses to present. I believe the division supports the request.
I believe that Mr. Coulthard from the BLM is present today and may wish to make a brief statement.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Rogers. My name is Michael Coulthard with the Bureau of Land Management. The Bureau of Land Management sent a letter of support on this matter on January 14th, 2016. The BLM does not consider this letter a response in accordance with the rules of the state of Utah, as it was not timely filed. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have in regards to the plan of development process, which is basically, for most instances, a memo that is sent to the division through an email process and the electronic permitting of wells within unit agreements. Sure. For the most part, the BLM plan of development process is a memo that is sent to the division through the electronic permitting process. It's set up so that when a permit comes into the state of Utah, an email is automatically generated to me for a review of that particular well, and then we sent a memo to our field offices stating that we have no objections or getting things cleaned up. A copy of that is sent to the division, and a copy of those memos is always part of the case file for that permit.
So with the vacating of these spacing rules, or not spacing, siting rules, then the division would have no input onto how these wells are spaced or sited?
Within the permitting process, of course you would.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Burkhardt?
Just in closing, based on the exhibits and the testimony presented, I ask that you recommend that QEP's request for agency action be approved as submitted.
Okay. Well, I will consider these issues, and could you support recommend findings of facts and conclusion of law, and I'll present those before the board. At this point, I agree with what you've done, but this will be presented before the board at their February 24th hearing.
I will. Yes, I'll prepare the recommended findings of fact and conclusions of law.
Okay. This has been something that's been done commonly in this area, both north, east, and west of this area, and so I have no issue that this should be appropriate and would maximize the return and conservation of resources. So, anything else, Mr. Alder?
Nothing.
Okay. Well, thank you for your interest in this matter, and we'll look forward to your conclusions of law and findings of facts.
And thank you, everybody, for the effort that they have put into this today, and for your time and attention. We appreciate everybody's efforts.
Okay. I'd like to have a special thank to Paul Gedge of the Division of Natural Resources for him putting this together. It's really a slick process now, and so we appreciate that. Thank you, Paul. Okay, we'll go off the record now. Okay.